If you thought we were done with stimulus proposals, well, you'd be wrong. It ain't over till it's over. There is now yet another stimulus proposal, and on this channel so far I have covered the $2.2 trillion stimulus package that passed, as well as 3 other proposals. All those links will be down below in the description if you haven't seen those videos yet. Makes you wonder, if they have all this time to come up with proposals, why isn't this time being used to get one passed? But as the country is reopening in some areas, not all, we're actually starting to see evidence that having a stay-at-home order and keeping on lockdown would actually do more damage than the virus itself. Hospitals are turning down people with seemingly non-urgent illnesses and diseases, and those people are ending up dying. There's been a massive increase in domestic violence, depression, suicide. People have been unable to access their employer's health insurance, so we do need that extension, but some models are actually showing that there'd be more fatalities if we kept people at home as opposed to letting them out and working. And as the country is starting to reopen, is it necessary to take on this kind of debt? And in this case, it would be a gargantuan amount. It would be $3 trillion, which would dwarf the originally passed CARES Act. So the House has introduced yet another new stimulus bill. This time it is called the Health and Economic Recovery Omnibus Emergency Solutions Act, or the HEROES Act. So like I said, this $3 trillion bill would exceed the $2.2 trillion worth of debt that was taken on for the CARES Act, which would now make the HEROES Act, this act, the largest stimulus bill ever passed in US history. And the House will meet this Friday to vote on this bill, so we will see what happens from there. So be sure that you are subscribed to the channel so that way you don't miss any future updates or videos at all. Be sure you are subscribed. You don't want to miss anything. I post videos every single week without fail, and make sure that you do have that notification bell clicked so that you're notified every single time I make a new video. So I'm going to be breaking down the entire bill, what it covers, what it entails, who's going to benefit, all of that. So let's dive right in. The HEROES Act would provide funding for a wide range of groups, and it would also include a new stimulus check. It would also be hazard pay for essential workers, as well as funding for state and local governments. You're also going to be seeing funding for testing for the sickness, as we'll call it, as YouTube is starting to block out videos that mention the thing. And you're also going to be seeing rent and mortgage assistance, and you're also going to be seeing an extension of the $600 weekly benefits program. And on top of that, a bunch of other factors like additional funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, additional funding for small businesses, emergency relief for the U.S. Postal Service, and provisions for election safety and facilitating voting by mail. Here's House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's tweet saying the other day that the House Democrats introduced the HEROES Act, which is bold legislation to address the COVID-19 health and economic crisis. So yes, this new stimulus bill would produce brand new stimulus checks. It's going to be up to $6,000 for families. This is going to benefit individual taxpayers and their families. It would bring another $1,200 stimulus check to anyone making under $75,000 a year. Families could also receive $1,200 for up to 3 qualified dependents. Unlike the $500 payment under the CARES Act, this means some families would receive up to $6,000. There's also a wording change. Children get transformed into dependents. And so the HEROES Act also changes the wording from the CARES Act from children to dependents, which increases the number of eligible recipients. And when it comes to the income limits, they're actually the same as they were under the CARES Act, so this would perhaps make it a little bit easier to pass. Under single people, it's going to be up to $75,000. Married filing jointly is $150,000. Head of household is $112,500. And there's also going to be a phase out for incomes. So single people is $75,000 through $99,000. Married filing jointly is $150,000 through $198,000. And head of household, $112,500 through $136,500. But there are some revisions when it comes to these stimulus check rules that they were in the CARES Act. So as we know, some taxpayers did not receive an economic impact payment, or commonly known as the stimulus check. Under the CARES Act, this was because their tax return did not include Social Security or TIN numbers for everyone included on the tax return. This also included married couples who filed a return in which at least one person should have qualified for a stimulus payment. So the HEROES Act will effectively change that completely. This will now all qualified persons on a tax return to receive stimulus payments. Those who do not qualify will simply not be eligible for a payment, as opposed to with the CARES Act, where anyone that did not qualify, the payment was blocked and prevented from going through. And it will also prevent the stimulus checks from being totally garnished from your bank accounts. So as always, each of these proposals have different methods as far as payment, so how would payments go through with this legislation? So this bill would actually provide stimulus checks in the same manner as the CARES Act. If your direct deposit information is already on file, you would receive the stimulus check through direct deposit. And if not, you would receive a check via mail. And just like with the CARES Act, you would have the opportunity to update your information on the IRS portal. So you can do that if you wanted to have it sent to your bank account. And this is quite the extension. There would be an historic extension of unemployment benefits with this bill. So the $600 federal payment on top of the unemployment benefits would now be extended through January as opposed to July, which would be an insane extension of unemployment benefits. And with the act passed in March, this would actually also maintain benefits for the self-employed, independent contractors, gig workers, and certain people affected by coronavirus through March instead of the end of December. And it would continue the additional 13 weeks of payments through March. And it will also expand funding for people that smash the like button. Be sure that you give it a big thumbs up, smash the like button. It just helps with the YouTube algorithms. That way more people could see videos just like this and be in the know. But if you didn't notice, the name is purposely called the HEROES Act because it's going to provide $200 billion worth of funding for workers who are on the front lines during this pandemic. This was a measure that was not included in the 4 prior relief packages. And the House proposal would also funnel more money into efforts that Congress had originally supported in the previous legislation. And it would send nearly $1 trillion to state, local, territorial, and tribal governments, which are facing big budget gaps as their tax revenues plummet amid the shutdowns of non-essential businesses and the loss of millions of jobs. And it will also provide another $75 billion in funding for the sickness testing, contact tracing, as well as isolation measures. Plus, it also calls for Americans who fall ill to get free treatment, no cost. Now, Republicans are not a very big fan of this bill as it is pushing the Democrats' liberal agenda. For example, the Democratic lawmakers also want to bolster the nation's safety net by increasing the maximum food stamp benefit by 15%, a provision that they could not get into prior packages, and providing additional funding for nutrition programs for children. It would also offer $175 billion to help renters and homeowners, and it would also offer subsidies to help Americans who lose their employer-provided health insurance keep their coverage. So, will this HEROES Act be passed? Well, as we know, proposing new legislation is always complicated, and this would be the largest of its kind so far. And as I mentioned, it's firing up party lines and getting tremendous pushback from Republicans. But this could have a better chance of going through as opposed to the 2,000 monthly stimulus checks that were proposed in other videos that I covered. Those other bills are significantly more costly and they do not provide additional funding for other programs. So as a result, those other proposals are less likely to be passed, although Trump and Republicans are already calling this new legislation dead on arrival. Trump declared on Wednesday that House Democrats' $3 trillion House coronavirus bill is dead on arrival, arguing it was packed with unrelated priorities. Quote, "It's as they say, DOA, dead on arrival," Trump said during a meeting with the governors of Colorado and North Dakota. He said, quote, "Of course Nancy Pelosi knows that." President Trump complained that this proposal is essentially a voting package. Trump and Republicans alike would not be for this as it would expand mail-in voting. He said it would disadvantage Republicans in future elections if passed into law. Quote, "They want to be able to make sure that Republicans can't win an election by putting in all sorts of mail-in ballots." So this bill is unlikely to garner any Republican support in either chamber of Congress. It includes various Democratic priorities that are intended to put pressure on Republicans to start negotiations on help for workers and local governments. This bill entails numerous provisions championed on by liberals, such as food stamp expansion and funding for state and local governments. Now, these state and local governments, blue and red alike, have been pleading for funding throughout the pandemic. However, the other side just sees it as way too partisan. Democrats have pushed for expanded ballot access for November if in-person voting is just too complicated, too difficult, or can be seen as hazardous. This act would have to be totally edited and amended to gain any support from the other side. However, in lieu of $2,000 payments directly to Americans, I do believe that expanding these unemployment benefits would incentivize people to search for work, get back to work, and get back on their feet as soon as possible. But as we know, not everyone qualifies for these unemployment benefits, and so another $1,200 stimulus check won't provide much for them and their families. Conceivably, if these stimulus checks were, say, bumped up to $3,000 per individual, I think that could help people a lot more. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, do you think that we should have people being kept home? Do you think people who want to work should be able to work? I want to know your thoughts. Tell me down below in the comments what you think. It is getting very scary with having this stay-at-home order, restricting people and preventing people from being able to go to a hospital and get treatment for something that could be very serious and perhaps fatal. I'm also curious to hear what you think is the best stimulus package that I've covered so far on this channel. What is your favorite proposal? Which one do you think makes the most sense? which one is most practical and can be implemented right away and would do wonders for people. But I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, be sure that you give the video a big thumbs up, smash the like button, and share it with a friend. That way they know all about the proposal that I've covered. And if you'd like to see more videos from my channel, be sure that you are subscribed. I post videos every single week without fail. I never ever miss, guaranteed, or your money back, even though it's free to subscribe. And be sure that you hit that notification bell as well. Stay notified every single time I make a video, because I post videos every single week covering business, finance, entrepreneurship, mindset, strategy, and tips and tricks from my own experience. See you in the next video.